What does it take to make the perfect trilogy? My answer is Sly 1, Sly 2, and Sly 3. That's not to say that every game in the series is perfect or even that every game is equal, but keeping the consistent identity while also contributing progressive ideas throughout the Sly Cooper classics cements Sly as a legend worthy of a place in any gamer's vault. The theme of Sly 3 is very much to relish the journey over the destination, and we can see that in its level design and plot developments, which are perhaps the most adventurous of the series, even if the stakes are a bit more pedestrian than saving the world. If Sly 1 and 2 were personal journeys for Sly and the gang, Honor Among Thieves is for the other characters this time, the more underrated heroes and former villains of the series that deserve their shine. Sly 3 is a redemption story, a greatest hits version for the thieves, a highlight of some of their best capers as they attempt nothing less than to pull off the heist of the century. From a glance, it's tough to predict how a job will end from one to the next, let alone one game to the next, but Sly is reliable to always put a smile on our faces when the credits roll. It's one of the few video games that one could imagine being successfully adapted into a Saturday morning cartoon. It's the high concept and lovable characters that make it work as a great piece of media without ever having to try hard to impress us. Sly 3 is a fan favorite for these reasons, and while I myself and many others consider Sly 2 to be the series' pinnacle, Sly 3 is regarded by many fans to be the most fun, and it's easy to see why. It has the most variety of the three games, with ambitions beyond just stealth and platforming that foray into entirely wacky gameplay devices. At Sucker Punch at their most experimental, and though it does drop to some low points for the series, it reaches some of the highest highs. It's all the more remarkable, then, that the game was conceived and developed in under a year, proving that modern video games have no excuses taking entire console life cycles to produce. A distinctive art style is more important than photorealism and high resolution, and the unique ideas are more important than chasing trends. Speaking of trends, as a series known for being ahead of its time, you can see the similarities between Sly 3 and Persona 5 once more. The assembly of misfits for the crime to end all crimes is all of the right energy and intrigue of a magnetic heist thriller. Great minds think alike and even steal from each other. Can we also just point out how dumb the subtitle for Uncharted 2 is that they decided to call it Among Thieves? Where is the honor in that? Like Persona 5, Sly 3 opens cold with in medias res, leaving us in perplexing suspense. The mysterious crew members are shielded by silhouettes, and our hero is left in peril as we retrace our steps for how we got in this mess. To that end, we visit the world's alpha cities and recruit the apex criminals of the underworld. The return of the Notorious pairs well with the new gang members in making Sly 3 feel different tonally from the duology. Sly doesn't steal the show here. It's about the ensemble cast of renegades and how they repurchase their honor. The developers chose well in bringing back fan-favorite pimp Dimitri, who was just too cool to be a bad guy, and the original Kung Fu Panda that together make fireworks for the team. When you add in a purple koala Zen Master, a female Bentley, and a playable Carmelita, Sly 3's goal of achieving true gameplay diversity is a job complete. There are obvious gameplay improvements in Sly 3, like the optimization of the navigation for the trio. Bentley being wheelchair-bound was a great excuse to upgrade his tech, and he can now triple thrust with built-in rocket boosts and go fishing for loot. Murray's maneuverability is enhanced by his ball form, and he feels more natural as a bruiser now that he can literally shake down the enemies for cash. The inclusion of the new crew members adds novelty on top of the ambition. In some ways, going this big in terms of concept is the only way a third Sly game could have gone. Yet the game worlds feel a little smaller without the clue bottles and the hidden power-ups and treasures. The drawback to this is that some of the cool gadgetry from Sly 2 is missing here, and the general abilities are more streamlined with the progression lacking a bit along with a slightly shorter game length depending on the player. but the gameplay is more open-ended to match the more open nature of the levels. The new tools we do have, like the grapple cam and the funny disguises, help with the immersion and replayability. And one of my favorite games is the pirate ship, which, with a few more features, could have been a better version of Sea of Thieves in its own right. And come to think of it, it is anyway. Sailing the high seas, sinking ships, and jumping aboard for a mini boss battle and easy loot is an enjoyable pastime that fits organically into the world design for its level. Every mission is replayable this time, with some time challenges sprinkled on top, allowing us to jump straight into the juicy parts and skip the cutscenes. The jobs are often less about platforming and legwork and more about action. Some of the most delightful missions are in Sly 3, like the famous lemonade stand brawl, and the boss fight with Sao in the ancient forest proving grounds, and the perfect finale for the series that encapsulates all of the gameplay techniques throughout the series and the lore behind them, the Ancestors Gauntlet parkour challenge through the Cooper stockpile. Even with taking the mini-games literally to new heights, the game feels a lot more hands-on, never seeming to repeat a gimmick in a way that overstays its welcome. Minor elements are skimmed off the top here, but they also cut a few corners, a few empty calories off the predecessor. Sucker Punch improved the general gameplay formula without having to alter much of the recipe. It's a much more goofy game than Sly 2 with tons of quotable moments and exciting twists. It probably needed to be more lighthearted after all that took place over the course of the first two games. Inch for inch, you could argue that the levels in Sly 3 are as entertaining to explore as any of the levels in the previous installments, even if the traditional platforming mechanics have been scaled back. It's no longer about the traversal as much as it is trying different things in a sandbox environment. With fewer levels, care had to be taken to make each one memorable, and each one has something unique to help them stand out. Venice has the boats and the canals that act as bridges. Australia has the hungry crocodiles. Holland has the windmills, catapults, and blimps to allow us to take to the skies. China has the bamboo shoots and the high-rise pagodas that give a sense of verticality. And Dead Men Tell No Tales has the pirate ship fleets and beaches with buried treasure. In fact, they all have a treasure map hiding something. It's just too bad that we didn't get to see what it is. The jobs, heists, and hubs are consistently rewarding with only a few minor exceptions here. Rumble Down Under gets a little too much criticism, I feel, while the final chapter, really more of a single heist, doesn't age as well with some of the tedious mini-games here. Although the build up to the climax is paced appropriately, the finale feels like the game ended on a rushed note, and after all the gang had built up in reputation and status, Sly decides to give it all up to chase tail. They had been building up the romance between Sly and Carmelita in every game, so it only seems right that the gentleman thief claim his lady as his ultimate prize. But the characterization of Carmelita is a bit inconsistent, owing to the change in voice actor from game to game. She felt most important in Sly 2 when she was in on the conspiracy and actively aiding the Cooper gang to defeat their common threat. But the main theme of Sly Cooper as a whole seems to be family. And we can see that here, as every storyline is about honoring family legacy in some way, keeping friends together through the years, and cleansing oneself of toxic grudges of the past. It's the perfect send-off for Sly that he and his gang finally got everything they wanted and deserved. Seeing Sly fake his amnesia just to get close to Carmelita, and how she's content to go along with it, is heartwarming and a sign that it's okay to end the series on a happy note with a well-timed trilogy. There is always the potential for more games from our favorite franchises, but having the restraint to keep it simple and keep it true is what separates great games from the tryhards. If a game isn't made for the love of it, then there's probably no reason in making it to begin with. Sly 3 is a game that is debatable within the fandom, but one thing for sure is that it ends with the series exclamation point that it always deserved, and it kept the honor of the Cooper tradition alive.
Close to the end for the...
Right. That raccoon is good.